The United States, and indeed all of Western civilization, is in rapid decline. Life was better in the past. Mother and father were happily married. They had well-raised and well-adjusted children. They were traditional and God-fearing. They could afford a home and to send their children to college, and even to take a few nice vacations each year. Indeed, if you took Americans from the 1950s and transported them into the present, they would think they'd landed in a dystopian future, and they would be horrified. During this approximately 50-minute video, we will review many elements of modern society that are deteriorating, and taken as a whole, demonstrate how both America and Western civilization at large are in decline. The various sections and their timestamps can be seen below. At the end of the video, we offer a unifying solution that counters all aspects of societal decline. In the past, Americans had large families, averaging 3.5 children per family in the 1900s. Today, large families have all but disappeared, with current birth rates at 1.7 children per family, well below the required replacement fertility rate. In the past, obesity was virtually non-existent. Today, obesity is widespread. IQ is inversely correlated with obesity. In other words, as average IQs continue to fall, obesity will continue to increase. Today, well over half the people in the country are either overweight or obese. Obesity is rising rapidly in both men and in women. Half of the world is on track to be overweight or obese by 2035. In the past, divorce was uncommon. Married couples stayed together, and there was both religious and social stigma around divorce. Today, divorce is common, with well over 50% of marriages ending in divorce. The role of the father has been eliminated by the government, and instead, women have been tricked into believing in the hoax of feminism. For many families today, Uncle Sam is the man of the house. Why? More tax dollars, bigger government, and more dependence on women on the government. Women are evolutionarily adapted toward patriarchy and reliance on men to make important decisions. Additionally, the hormonal effects of estrogen render the vast majority of women too emotional to make objective, sound decisions. Women's suffrage, granted in 1920, was a mistake. Ever since then, women vote for leaders based on emotion and popular appeal, not on ability and competence. Women are particularly susceptible to demagoguery. The government and politicians know this and exploit it maximally for their own gain. Further, more women in the workplace means more children raised by daycares, in public, which is to say, government, schools, and by social media. A perfect storm of government indoctrination. This is all by design. There is a significant spike in mental disorders today, primarily among white, liberal women. This is an unfortunate side effect of acting and living in a manner that is antithetical to evolution, something we'll discuss shortly. For thousands of years, life expectancy has been increasing. Unfortunately, now, for the first time in history, life expectancy is declining. In addition to our lives getting shorter, they are also getting worse, with quality of life declining across all metrics. America was founded on Christian values. Indeed, the Constitution is based on tenets from the Bible, and historically, Americans were devout Christians. And as has been shown over 2,000 years, where Christianity flourishes, life improves, and civilization blossoms. Unfortunately, there is a war on Christianity going on today, and Christianity is losing. Life was better before so-called social media and smartphones. Do you wonder why movies these days are all mindless superheroes fighting each other? Why all we see on TV are low IQ reality TV people and rappers? The answer is simple. Society is getting rapidly dumber. IQs are in free fall, and this sort of entertainment is the only thing that these simpletons can understand. YouTubers are essentially modern-day court jesters, clowns, performing pranks, tricks, or playing video games. Their audiences consist of low IQ losers who used redistributed money to make the court jesters rich. In the past, it would have been impossible for clowns like these guys to earn a living, much less earn millions of dollars. And then we have OnlyFans, where anyone can instantly become a porn star. Of course, social media moguls will happily exploit these trends for their benefit. I can hear your objections. But wait, that's capitalism. It's the free market. That's how it works. This would be true if the money generated in these industries was coming from the consumers. But it is not. It is being redistributed from high IQ taxpayers to low IQ non-taxpayers, who are then squandering it on the social media court jesters and the OnlyFans porn stars. More on this soon. In the past, having children out of wedlock carried a social stigma. Thus, illegitimacy was rare. Today, illegitimacy is widespread. Additionally, illegitimacy has strong racial correlations, with over 2/3 of black babies born out of wedlock and over 1/3 of Hispanic babies born out of wedlock. These numbers continue to increase. Most worrisome of all, there is a strong inverse correlation between IQ and number of offspring. In other words, the least competent in society are having the most children. Mathematically speaking, this is a ticking time bomb. Again, there are strong racial correlations with illegitimacy. In 2020, 41% of births were out of wedlock. For blacks, the number was 74%. Illegitimacy is correlated with a long list of maladies, a few of which can be seen here. Illegitimacy is harmful to all parties involved: the mother, the father, and the child. Welfare, or any of the many other forms of redistribution, naturally reward and thus incentivize illegitimacy. In other words, more redistribution equals more illegitimacy. In the past, there were no taxes. Now we pay approximately 50% of our income toward taxes. But has society improved from the trillions in tax dollars we pay? I think we all know the answer to this. Okay, so how does this all tie together? What is the main cause of decline of the USA and of Western civilization? In a word, redistribution. Redistribution from the productive and high IQ taxpayers to the non-productive and low IQ non-taxpayers. The original purpose of taxes was for the common good, for things like parks, roads, police, and the fire department. This makes sense. Unfortunately, when politicians realized that they could use tax dollars to buy votes, it all started going downhill. Now, the overwhelming majority of tax dollars are redistributed to low IQ, non-productive, non-working, and zero tax-paying citizens and illegal aliens in exchange for them to vote for the left. That is, the Democrat Party in the USA. This is the racket. Welfare was first established in 1935 by FDR to help poor and dependent people during the Great Depression. That was how it started. Now, welfare and the many other forms of redistribution in the aggregate are greater than if the individual were to get a job and actually earn income. Why then would anyone work? Have you noticed how hard it is to find good employees these days? The reasons are 1. Falling IQs. That is, everyone is dumber. And 2. Many would rather sit at home and get handouts rather than work. And they'll keep voting Democrat. Where does the money come from? If only taxes were enough to cover the massive redistribution. They are not, and our national debt continues to skyrocket. Elon Musk makes an astute observation here. A quarter of all taxes just to pay the interest on the debt. Is there any business or private organization that could stay solvent with finances like this? Of course, when we consider unfunded entitlements, that is, Social Security and Medicare, the true national debt is much higher, estimated here to be $144 trillion, or 6 times annual GDP. Obviously, this is unsustainable, and it's a matter of time before the bottom falls out. The increasingly left-wing U.S. government spends recklessly, with no concern for the future of the country, or for future generations. In the last 30 years, there have been tremendous technological innovation. The personal computer, the internet, the smartphone, and one would think that standard of living and quality of life would have increased commensurately. It has not. Why? It is estimated that since the advent of the internet in 1995 and smartphones in 2007 till today, the world has added productivity with a value of $40 trillion to global GDP. Where has all that money gone? To the top and to the bottom. To the leftist elite leaders and to the leftist voters. Why do New York City's subway stations look the way they do compared to Asia's? One-word answer: redistribution. In America, the majority of taxpayer dollars are redistributed to the underclass in exchange for them to vote for the Democrats and leftists. In Asia, they have no underclass comparable to the U.S.'s. Thus, they don't need to redistribute. Their tax dollars are put to work for things that benefit the public. Let's introduce a new term: dysgenics. Dysgenics is when successive generations get worse and worse. For example, lower IQs, less competent, less capable, less fit, with worse and worse genes. Of course, this is antithetical to Darwinian natural selection. And indeed, dysgenics has never occurred throughout the history of evolution, because redistribution does not exist in the natural world. In a normal world without redistribution, one in which Darwinian natural selection is allowed to operate normally, only the strong survive. This means that the smartest, best, and most genetically fit individuals procreate more, and the dumbest, worst, and least genetically fit individuals procreate less, or not at all. Thus, the species gets stronger and better with every successive generation. But now, thanks to redistribution, Darwinian natural selection has been reversed, and dysgenics is the law of the land in all Western nations. As you can see here, a dysgenic populace with lower and lower IQs spells doom for the civilization. More violence, more accidents, more train derailments, more inefficiency, more crime, more litter, more civil unrest. All in all, a rapidly declining society. Does this sound familiar to you? Now you know why. Redistribution. Worst of all, these low IQ, dysgenic individuals vote. Further, what is society going to do with all of these low IQ, genetically unfit individuals? We will place them in jobs that they are not qualified for. Pilots, air traffic controllers, train operators, doctors, nurses, and other positions where people's lives are at stake. This is already happening. Notice the increasing number of flight delays, train derailments, and infrastructure failures, all signs of a catastrophic competency crisis, all signs of a civilization in rapid decline. Indeed, average IQs are dropping fast across all Western nations. The more dysgenic the population, the more diverse, the lower the average IQ, and the worse off society is. A map of global IQs tells us what we already know. There are stark, average IQ differences between countries and between races. Do you see the madness around us? How we are failing our children? Do you wonder, how is this happening? The answer is redistribution, which leads to an increasingly low IQ, dysgenic population. And this low IQ, dysgenic populace votes, something they are wholly unqualified to do. Whites are being bred out of existence, and in many cases, exterminated, like this unfortunate mother of 4. A low IQ, dysgenic voting populace is oblivious to mass corruption. They vote for these corrupt politicians who enrich themselves off taxpayer dollars and redistribute breadcrumbs to the masses, so the masses keep voting for the left. The idiocracy we see on a daily basis is the downstream result of redistribution. We've established that redistribution is antithetical to nature and directly causes dysgenics. Thus, we coin a new term, redistributive dysgenics. Caveat: there are other causes of dysgenics. For example, the Industrial Revolution caused such a quantum leap in standard of living that many people who would not have survived or procreated were then able to. But redistribution, deliberate mostly by left-wing politicians, is the primary driver of dysgenics. Now, with the advent of AI, many more lower-level jobs will be done by computers. This will lead to millions more low IQ, unproductive, obese, social media and smartphone-addicted individuals in society, with absolutely nothing to do. They will have your taxpayer dollars redistributed to them, but that won't be enough. Idle time is the devil's playground. They will wreak havoc. They will make the BLM and Antifa riots look like a visit to Disneyland. We mentioned this before, but it's worth doing so again. Redistribution in any form is antithetical to nature and to natural selection. It spells doom for the species. The king's chessboard. A wise man asked the king to give him 1 grain of rice on the first square of a chessboard, doubling the amount on each subsequent square. On the surface, this was a modest request. The initial growth was insignificant, 2 grains on the second square, 4 grains on the third square, etc. But with doubling over time, by the time they reached the 64th square on the chessboard, 9 quintillion grains of rice were needed. The amount of rice that is equal to 4 Mount Everests, more than all the rice on the planet. This is the power of exponential growth. And this is what is happening with redistributive dysgenics. Every single generation. Tick-tock. Indeed, as the vicious cycle of redistributive dysgenics continues, these devastating changes to society happen faster and faster, resulting in exponential growth as shown in this graph. As you can see, if nothing is done to halt these trends, economic collapse, squalor, and dystopia are mathematical certainties. The left, that is, the Democrats in the USA, are largely responsible for redistributive dysgenics. They redistribute maximally, and they open the border to bring in the third world. This is all by design. The more they can drive down the average IQ, the more low IQ voters, both citizens and illegals, there are in the country, the more votes that the left will get. Low IQ individuals are susceptible to demagoguery, and women, even high IQ women, are susceptible to demagoguery. This explains why the left pushes their agenda for multiracialism, multiculturalism, and feminism. All these blocks are either low IQ or driven by emotion, and they overwhelmingly vote for the left. This is why the left has a deep grip on U.S. politics today. The tipping point of demographics has long passed. It will only get worse from here. Let's look at the vicious cycle of redistribution, something we alluded to earlier. 1. The taxpayers pay 50% or more of their income towards redistribution. 2. Redistribution comes in many forms, which we'll look at shortly, but it's all the same thing. 3. Taking money from productive, high IQ taxpayers and giving it to non-productive, low IQ, dysgenic non-taxpayers. 4. What do the low IQ, dysgenic masses spend your redistributed tax dollars on? That's right, social media, YouTube, TikTok, OnlyFans, and the rest. Remember the billionaire social media company founders from earlier? They are getting rich off of your redistributed tax dollars. And if that wasn't bad enough, they further indoctrinate their addicted, dysgenic users with leftist ideology. Now, do you understand why all the big tech companies, Facebook, Google, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and yes, even Twitter, still plenty of censorship there, are in cahoots with the Democrat Party? Because the Democrat Party redistributes your money to low IQ voters, who in turn spend most of that money on big tech. 5. And then big tech, through their leftist brainwashing, not hard to do with the low IQ, gets the dysgenic masses to vote for the Democrats. 6. The big tech companies and the leftist politicians accumulate more money and power, and you pay for it all. The racket is highly effective. This is a classic vicious cycle. Redistribution leads to dysgenics, which in turn increases votes for the left, who redistribute even more, which leads to more dysgenics, and on and on. This is how you hollow out an economy and how civilizations collapse. How much have we redistributed since 1933? Adjusted for inflation, the amount is a whopping $70 trillion. $70 trillion from the high IQ, productive, genetically fit taxpayer to the low IQ, unproductive, genetically unfit non-taxpayer. And this has had predictable effects for more power for the left. Ever-expanding welfare and redistribution programs, and generational poverty, the so-called Democrat plantation. Understandably, the U.S. economy is tanking, but the left doesn't care about that. They care about their power, their fiefdoms, and their personal gain. And it's not just a domestic problem. By some estimates, Africa has received over $5 trillion in foreign aid, yet one of the many euphemisms for redistribution. Results? No improvement in Africa, but a lot more African babies being born. That is to say, dysgenics. Let's look at some more facts and figures related to redistribution. 57% of U.S. households pay no federal income tax in 2021. That means they earned nothing. That means 100% of their sustenance is paid by your redistributed tax dollars, a policy which the Democrats staunchly support. Which party do you think they vote for? The purported number of illegal aliens in the USA is 16 million, and the purported cost to the taxpayer for this is $140 billion annually. All these numbers are suppressed so as not to cause panic. The real numbers are likely 4 times these. As an example, let's look at the numbers behind the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. 23% on welfare, 36% on Medicaid, healthcare redistribution, and 42% on food stamps, more redistribution. And Puerto Ricans vote Democrat. Not to single out Puerto Ricans, we have plenty of similar groups on the U.S. mainland. Welfare is just one of the more overt forms of redistribution, but there are many others that are not so obvious, and they all have euphemistic names. Pell Grants, Federal Housing Assistance, Trade Adjustment Assistance, Title X Social Services Block Grants, Job Training Partnership, Summer Youth Employment Program, Job Corps, Head Start, and Low-Income Home Energy Assistance. Don't be fooled by the benevolent-sounding names. These are all outright handouts of your tax dollars to low IQ individuals, so they will vote for the Democrats. The list of vehicles for redistribution is long, and more forms are included here. Let's look at these one by one. 1. Affirmative action. This is racial discrimination against whites and Asians. It puts blacks and Hispanics in positions in school and in the workplace which they do not have the mental capacity for. These people invariably perform poorly, yet they are paid the same as their white and Asian counterparts, who perform their jobs with competence. This is redistribution. 2. Subsidization. Whenever you hear that word in the context of government, it is code for redistribution. What it means is that they are taking your tax dollars and partially or fully paying for the expenses of low IQ, mostly people of color. This could be for houses, cars, Obama phones, or anything else. It's redistribution. 3. Classroom discipline. This is an externality. Heavily black public schools require far more taxpayer dollars to maintain order than do majority white public schools. Externality redistribution. 4. Same situation with destruction of property. Black areas routinely require taxpayer dollars to repair property. You, the taxpayer, pay for that. More externality redistribution. 5, 6, and 7. It is well known that blacks and Hispanics commit more crime than whites and Asians, and thus spend more time in prison than do whites and Asians. Again, you, the taxpayer, foot the bill. More redistribution as an externality. 8. This is an interesting one. Many blacks are awarded degrees based on affirmative action, degrees they could otherwise not attain on their own. Because of their incompetence, they are unemployable in the private sector. What do we do with them? We stuff them into government agencies, as that is the only sector that they can retain a job in. 9. And if that weren't bad enough, we then have to suffer because we are forced to deal with their incompetence and inefficiency when we are forced to deal with these government agencies. Do you notice how many black females you have to deal with at the U.S. Post Office, the DMV, or any government agencies these days? Not exactly rays of sunshine, right? That's a double whammy of redistribution. 10. Low IQ, dysgenic individuals that have much more obesity than high IQ individuals. IQ is in fact inversely correlated with obesity. Think about the last time you flew on a plane. You are of normal weight, but I'm sure you saw some morbidly obese passengers as well, right? What is one of the costliest aspects of flying? Fuel costs. And what determines fuel costs? That's right, weight. Transporting obese bodies costs more than transporting your non-obese body. But guess what? You both pay the same price for your ticket. In effect, you are paying more for your ticket than you should be, and the low IQ, obese passenger is paying less. More of your high IQ money is redistributed to these low IQ, obese people. 11. What about clothes? You wear a small or a medium, maybe a large if you are a large but not obese guy. What do the low IQ, obese masses wear? XL, XXL, XXXL. Their clothing takes twice the amount of fabric and manufacturing than yours does, but you both pay the same price. Again, you are subsidizing the low IQ, obese individuals. Externality redistribution. 12. When is the last time you went to a buffet? You eat, but not as much as the low IQ, obese family there. They eat 2 times what you do, but you both pay the same price. Yet again, you are subsidizing their food. That is more externality redistribution. 13. Have you noticed how there are many more fat people, not old, just fat, being pushed around in wheelchairs at airports? That service is at no charge to the flyer. You pay for it. More redistribution. 14. Minimum wage is not only frank redistribution, but it also increases unemployment. The free market should determine wage. Period. Full stop. 15. Tip inflation occurring now. Standard tip was 15%. Now, in many places, it's 18%, 20%, even 25%. More of your dollars being redistributed to mostly low IQ individuals, all of whom vote Democrat. Raising taxes on the minority of citizens who do pay taxes to redistribute to those who don't is bad enough. At least you're aware of this. 2. Running the printing presses and the resultant inflation, on the other hand, is stealing from your back pocket. 3. And now, with the benign-sounding Inflation Reduction Act checks, which do nothing to alleviate inflation, with these checks to the non-taxpayers, inflation becomes one of the single largest mechanisms of redistribution there is. 4. Paying double for groceries when compared to last year? That's the cost to buy Democrat votes, and you are paying for them. Expanding on crime. It costs approximately $100,000 to court an individual through the criminal justice system, and then $50,000 a year to house that individual in prison. All of this is paid for by your tax dollars. Low IQ individuals invariably commit more crime, and as IQs continue to fall, unsurprisingly, there is more crime. You pay for it, and they all vote for the Democrats. A stark example of externality redistribution. There are strong racial correlations with crime. Blacks committing the most, Hispanics next, and whites and Asians in last. Everyone knows this, no matter how much it is censored. The data on race and crime is clear, and everyone is aware of it, despite attempts at rampantly censoring this information. More well-known crime statistics. As redistribution continues unabated and leads to more dysgenics, this will get worse. We are seeing it around us every day. The list of avenues of redistribution is long and getting longer. UBI is around the corner, and reparations will follow shortly thereafter. The Democrats have mastered the art of vote buying, and they use your money to do it. Who pays for the fifth day? You do. And to thank you, that employee will vote Democrat. The lawmaker pictured here knows which side of her bread is buttered. More overt vote buying. And more overt vote buying. Why would anyone work? Stay home, get free stuff, get fat, and vote Democrat. Why the sudden love for illegal aliens by Democrats? Because they are having them vote. They get it. It's all about the numbers. As is often the case, California is leading the way in redistribution. More redistribution in California. California is arguably the most beautiful state in the USA, but with the rampant redistribution that its politicians practice, its economy is being hollowed out. As if abject redistribution weren't bad enough, California is also leading the way in sexual deviancy and childhood gender dysphoria. A democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury. The unfortunate reality is that one man, one vote democracy, where everyone's vote carries the same weight, is destined to fail given enough time. The Founding Fathers never intended for this to be the case, and we are seeing the catastrophic results from this today. In case we haven't made it clear enough, allow us to do so here. The sole purpose of redistribution is to buy votes for the Democrat Party and for the leftist politicians. It is not for anyone's benefit, despite what they say. Blacks, for example, are far, far worse off than they were in the 1950s. Back then, they had family units, values, went to church, had few illegitimate children. And today, after decades of quote-unquote help from the Democrat Party, where are they? The black family is destroyed. Obesity, Drug use, illegitimacy, and crime are rampant among blacks, and their IQs have dropped faster than any other race. They are squarely on the Democrat plantation, yet they will never stop voting Democrat. Let's take a look at our elected so-called leaders. Joe Biden, President of the United States, arguably the most powerful man in the world, suffers from severe senile dementia. AOC, elected House Representative. What are her prior qualifications? She was a bartender. Kamala Harris, current U.S. Vice President, slept with her boss 30 years her senior to gain her entry into politics. And Ilhan Omar, another House representative, married her own brother to gain entry to the United States. Individuals like these can only be elected by an increasingly low IQ voting populace. Redistribution leads to dysgenics, which in turn leads to lower IQs through society, which in turn leads to people like these being elected, which leads to rapid decline of society as we are witnessing. Maxine Waters, House Representative. Lori Lightfoot, former mayor of Chicago. Eric Adams, mayor of New York. John Fetterman, U.S. Senator. Elizabeth Warren, U.S. Senator. Bernie Sanders, U.S. Senator. All made possible by an increasingly dysgenic and low IQ voting electorate. These individuals have IQs of around 90, yet they are in positions of power. They could not run a lemonade stand. This is the result of one man, one vote democracy plus redistributive dysgenics. If redistributive dysgenics weren't enough, the Democrats want to hasten the collapse of the USA by importing the third world. Why? Because they will all vote Democrat. These are the reported numbers of illegal aliens in the USA. The true number is likely much higher, estimated at 50 million. You pay for them, and they overwhelmingly vote Democrat. Whites, those of European ancestry, those who founded the USA, are rapidly being replaced. To think that a nation can entirely replace their demographic makeup and remain the same is ludicrous, and we are seeing the results of diversity every day all around us. There is no benevolent intent here. The left does this solely to breed and import more low IQ voters so they can gain and retain permanent electoral majorities. This is not happening linearly, it is exponential. One need only visit a handful of formerly great American cities, Detroit, Birmingham, Newark, Memphis, to see evidence of demographic replacement for himself. Redistributive dysgenics is not just a U.S. issue. It is occurring globally in all countries of the West, Western Europe, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Trillions donated to Africa has made no difference, and more won't either. Africa's population is exploding, paid for by your tax dollars. And they will not stay in Africa. They will cross the Mediterranean. They will cross the U.S. southern border. They are coming for the cities, the suburbs, and for rural America too. Let's take a look at our global IQs map again. And let's compare that to global redistribution and global birth rates. What will the future look like? The future world where your children and grandchildren will live in. Of course, the extinguishing of the European race was planned long ago and is in full effect in the UK. Why so many black and white couples in TV, movies, and ads these days? It's not an accident, it's brainwashing, and it's working. There is no end in sight to the demographic replacement occurring in Europe. Left unchecked, Europe and Africa will reach an equilibrium of similar races within a few decades. Of course, if any of this is brought up to a leftist, they will claim that the answer is more redistribution. Of course, $70 trillion isn't enough. Surely, a few trillion more will do it. The extinction of the European race is not only not a conspiracy theory, it is a mathematical certainty. The graph presented clearly demonstrates the trend. The future belongs to Africans. How did this start? As alluded to earlier, while redistribution is the main driver of dysgenics, it is not the only one. The Industrial Revolution caused downstream dysgenics for reasons previously discussed. Further technological advances, personal computers, the internet, smartphones, they all contributed. 1870 is when blacks were allowed to vote, and women's suffrage was granted in 1920. Both were catastrophic mistakes. Of course, the Immigration Act of 1965 opened the floodgates of the U.S. to the lower IQ Third World. However, it was the election of Barack Obama in 2008 and his oratory skills, which he used to divide the country and to stoke the flames of racial tension for his and his party's political gain, when the decline of the U.S. went into warp speed. Of course, the election of Joe Biden, very likely a stolen election, in 2020, and his administration's divisive policies continues to fracture and harm the USA. Whatever you may think about the ethics of what the Democrats are doing, it is undeniable that their strategy is working. People of color overwhelmingly vote Democrat, blacks, Hispanics, and even Asians. And the sizable amount of whites voting Democrat? You guessed it, mostly women. Remember the mistake of women's suffrage? In addition to the racial and gender breakdowns, the Democrats have locked in the youth vote. Democrats won the Gen Z vote in every single state in the 2020 presidential election. Remember the vicious cycle of redistribution? Who is addicted to social media 24/7? That's right, young people. And they are being brainwashed by big tech to vote for the Democrats. And the Democrats are, in turn, redistributing your tax and inflation dollars to Gen Z and other low IQ voters, who are, in turn, spending those dollars on big tech. Again, you have to admit this is a brilliant racket. More of the same. People of color vote Democrat and women vote Democrat. This is a genetic, IQ, and hormonal issue. No amount of policy debates and reasonable conversations will change this. Squandering precious resources, doing so is a tremendous waste of opportunity cost. Again, young people overwhelmingly vote Democrat. Why do you think the Dems want to lower the voting age? There's a quote, "If you're not a Democrat before the age of 30, you don't have a heart. If you are a Democrat after the age of 30, you don't have a brain." Unfortunately, while that adage used to be true, today, the indoctrination of leftist ideology by big tech, the mainstream media, Hollywood, the marketing industry, public K-12 education, and universities is so complete that young people are not becoming more conservative as they age. Amazingly, they remain clueless leftists. And of course, this is worsening by falling IQs. We understand the quid pro quo going on here. Redistribution in exchange for Democrat votes. But the low IQ, dysgenic masses are oblivious to it. They are too busy with their bread and circuses, social media, superhero movies, degenerate reality TV, and junk food, the opiate of the masses. Bread and circuses kept the masses distracted during the final days of the Roman Empire, and they are accomplishing the same thing today. As for our elected leaders, they have plenty of issues to distract the masses with. Equity, diversity, inclusion, climate change, anything to keep their eyes off the single most important issue today, dysgenics. And our international competitors are waiting patiently, watching the left destroy the West from within, while they build up their economies and their militaries. China plans to win its 100-year marathon against the USA and the West, and this plan is progressing like clockwork. As the population increases and become more and more dysgenic in the USA and in Western Europe, what will we do with all these low IQ people who are incapable of taking care of themselves? That's right. 15-minute cities coming soon to a city near you, paid for by your redistributed tax dollars and by your inflation dollars. The dysgenic masses will get Inflation Reduction Act checks, so inflation won't affect them. Anyone who brings up issues of dysgenics, of falling IQs, of racial differences in intelligence or crime, or the fact that no multiracial or multicultural society in history has ever succeeded, is summarily canceled. Free speech was lost a long time ago. The soon-to-come CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, will allow for instant redistribution of your tax dollars to Democrat voters, out of your pocket and into theirs. The leftists are salivating at the prospect of CBDCs for this reason. In conclusion, Western civilization is collapsing before our very eyes. We are seeing a reversal of the Enlightenment, and we are entering the third Dark Ages. What makes this time unique is that it is not natural disaster or foreign invasion and conquest causing the collapse of civilization. The collapse is from within, from the left, from wokeism. The West is committing suicide. As previously stated, one man, one vote democracy, where everyone's vote counts the same. Taxpayer or non-taxpayer, man or woman, high IQ or low IQ, net positive or net negative in society, this simply does not work over the long run. What we are seeing is the end result of this. However, unlike prior collapses of Western civilization, the Greek Dark Ages, circa 1100 BC, or the Roman Dark Ages, circa 476 AD, there is an ascendant power in the world. One that has the ability to take over the entire world. That ascendant power is China. Edmund Burke, a noteworthy Anglo-Irish statesman, economist, and philosopher, articulated his contract for the ages. Society is indeed a contract. It is a partnership, not only between those who are living, but between those who are living, those who are dead, and those who are to be born. We have a duty to do everything in our power to improve the human condition, for our ancestors before us and for those that will come after us. We have a duty to save Western civilization. This is a call to action. Talk, debate, discussion, voting, tweeting, outrage, and standard politics do not work. It is too late for that. Republicans will do nothing. Waiting for a white knight politician is a fool's errand. The numbers are already lost, so counting on votes to reverse course is naive, as it is now mathematically impossible. Beyond this, the left knows that they can steal elections with impunity, and will do so with every key election going forward. There is only one issue that Americans can agree on today, and that is illegitimacy, unintended pregnancies, and unintended childbirths. For now, it is still accepted that illegitimacy is harmful to everyone: mother, father, children, and society. Addressing illegitimacy is the single highest yield step that can be taken to reverse the decline of Western civilization. The Democrats and leftists focus on the numbers. If conservatives want any hope of turning the tide, any hope of salvaging Western civilization, it's time they do the same. Our resources should be focused on stopping dysgenics and restoring Darwinian natural selection. The future of humanity depends on us accomplishing this goal.